Welcome to Madame Raven's. This way to the library. She's been expecting you.
I accidentally proposed to the Forest Spirit by MIstressLady. To start things off, let me say that I immigrated to America from Japan. My Japanese mother married my American father, who was stationed in Japan. We moved sometime around when I was in 5th grade. English as a second language was a complete bummer, if I may say so. What sense does it make for someone to feel like a complete idiot for knowing 2 distinct languages? Anyway, I'm now in college, if that gives you some reference. My time in Japan and my ancestral roots have led me to celebrate that which is living through Shintoism. There are many festivals throughout the year, many linked to villages and certain times of the year. One of those times is in September, during the Moon Festival. That was when this all started. I'd come home for the weekend, to my family home, backing up some green acres in suburbia on the East Coast. My mother had long ago separated from my father, and I was the only one home as I sipped whiskey and danced to enka on the Google Home that she had purchased. Who knew they liked enka? On the dark night the moon was round and full, like a woman, as the song denotes, and I remember the dance from my childhood. I let my arms rise and fall to the beat. I sang along as I looked at the moon, always looking at the moon, until my eyes fell on a tree that blocked my vision. It was a particularly nice tree, tall and folding in on itself. Old, though I can't say what kind because I'm not well versed on the biology of the forest. Perhaps I should be. Anyway, I was dancing my heart out until the Google Home stopped, and I knew my mother must have been using YouTube on her drive home. The light was fading in the sky as I held up my glass of Suntory and whispered, "Kanpai," a cheers to the forest which had always protected me in my youth. I looked at that defoliated tree as I sipped my glass and observed the fading light. It was a beautiful sight. I was probably a little toasty after my college boyfriend had given me the slip. "Kami-sama," I drawled, "if only I could find someone as lasting and strong as you." With that, I finished the glass and returned to my life. Today is the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year. Many cultures have celebrated this day, and perhaps that's why I was left with this decision. I'm a commuter and had finally returned home for winter break today. Classes are out all next week, and I finished my finals. I had returned home to an empty house of my mother and that aching maw of the woods from her back porch. It was warm today, warmer than it had been in my preceding years, so I decided to drink on one of the twin chairs as I ruminated about my ex-collegiate boyfriend proposing to that whore he met only a few months before, the one who stayed in the dorms with him. "Let me marry you," I mocked as I held my glass high. "We'll be happy all the rest of the days of our life." "Kanpai. Ima kimi was Chinsino," I sang. Maybe I did have a drinking problem. "Kimi ni shiawase are. Kimi ni shiawase are." Then a man appeared before me on the deck. He had silky white hair and auburn eyes. He perhaps seemed younger than I, but that could not be. His clothes were the color of leaves in autumn. It's done then. This one condones our marriage, it spoke. What? I blinked, dropping my empty glass with a thunk under the wooden deck. We will wed this equinox. My brain struggled against the toxin. Spring? My brow rose. When my tree is in bloom. My tree? I squeaked. Yes, the very same you've climbed, the same you've cried in, the same you propositioned. A slight smile came to his childish face. Then it was gone. I did no such thing. I stood and stomped my foot. Then he snapped his fingers, and something similar to a raccoon laid Kinpoutsumi bridal money at my feet. Let's just say it was enough to get me out of my student loan debt. My jaw dropped, and my alcohol-addled brain picked it up again. I can't pay you back, I supplied. It is not required. He shook his head and let one palm fall forward. Only your hand. I squinted at him. I blinked several times, knowing I was likely becoming nearsighted from staring at my phone all day. I looked him up and down. He was easy on the eyes, even if he was a shotta. I blinked once more. What could be the harm in delusion? Done, I answered as I placed my hand in his, feeling the dryness of a fallen leaf. I pulled it back at the strange sensation, but it was too late. His chiclet teeth were white in a smile. This spring, then, he said. His smile is warm, strangely wet. Breeze came with the fading light to take him away. I believe I'm promised now. What should I do? Part 2. How long has it been since I wrote? I feel like Urashima Taro with the way that time is flying. But I digress. Last time we spoke, I had mistakenly proposed to the forest spirit, one particularly tied to a cherry tree planted around 1912, or so my mother informed me. Kassan, I spoke at brunch after the winter equinox. Do you know what kind of tree that is? I pointed at the tall one with the reaching branches. Ah, she nodded. You should recognize that from your childhood in Japan. It's a cherry tree. Oh, it's that one? I gasped. I hadn't noticed it without the characteristic flowers. Rather than pink, these petals were pure white and fell like snow, the same color as that boy's hair. Had he noticed me admiring every spring? I was lost in my head for a moment. Is it, special? I mean, is there any sort of history behind it? She racked her brain. You know the Cherry Blossom Festival, the one commemorating the gift of the Japanese cherry trees from Mayor Yukio Ozaki to enhance the growing friendship between the United States and Japan. Around that time, cherry saplings were donated to every DC school. These used to be school grounds. Wow, I never knew, I breathed while looking out into the woods. From my childhood, that must be it. I was drunk. I saw something familiar, fell asleep, and dreamed up some sort of fairy tale. Feeling comfortable in my explanation, I laughed it off and proceeded with my life. Yet in the days and weeks that followed, my gaze always seemed to return to that tree. Particularly one evening while I was in the bath, looking out 2 large windows into the fading light of the forest. My gaze lifted upwards toward the branches, and I felt as if the tree itself were staring at me. Pervert! I stood swiftly, wrapping my towel around myself and walking out. As soon as I was in my pajamas, I paused for a laugh. How the hell could a tree be a pervert? Another time I was babysitting my cousin, and we went out to build a snowman. She started throwing snowballs, and the tree above instantly dropped its snowfall. I bet you can guess which tree it was. I stood there and stared at the barren branches for a long time before I shooed my cousin inside to watch Moana instead. Gradually, the tree faded from my mind when I met Jack. Jack was a commuter like me. We met at lunch on campus. When there wasn't a lot of space because of a big game, I crowded in next to him at a long table. He was a sight for sore eyes. I mean, if you're into emo type. Raven hair to his shoulders, an aquiline nose, and deep-set, brooding eyes. So you're a smoothie man, I attempted to make conversation. He looked at me as if examining a test question. More of a whiskey man, but I don't think they have it in stock. I smiled. He smiled back, and the rest was history. Flash forward a few days, and things were getting hot and heavy at my mother's house while she was out of town on business. He was kissing me on the couch in the living room when I suddenly opened my eyes and stupidly looked out the window into the woods at that tree. A shiver went down my spine as I sat bolt upright. "I'll be back in a second," I murmured as I headed off to the upstairs bathroom to gather myself. "It's not cheating," I reassured my hammering heart and queasy stomach. How could it be cheating? It's a tree, for crying out loud. And yet, as I passed my bedroom, I noticed one very disapproving adolescent sitting, arms crossed on my bed. His features were soft, but his auburn eyes were hard. I marveled at his Bishonen appearance. Had he grown? "This one does not approve of your union," he spoke haughtily. "This one?" I approached him. "What are you? Some god of—" Wait. You know what? Don't answer that. I don't want to know. I haven't seen you since the equinox. I've been drinking some cocktails, and you decided to show your face again. I'm drunk, I convinced myself. You're not real. Not real? The late teen stood from his place on my bed, now matching me in height. I assure you, I am as real as the one you're salivating over downstairs. Salivating? Yes, he smirked. A common trait among omnivores. Oh, I breathed, affronted. Listen, you. How am I supposed to love someone I see once, How am I supposed to assume you're not just a figment of my alcohol-fueled imagination? I wagged my finger. You go and shake your leaves at someone else. I've found a man. He raised a brow. A man? Yeah, the one downstairs. A laugh came through his nose. That is not a man you speak of. You're one to talk. You were just a boy last time I saw you. No, he interrupted. I do not speak of appearance. I speak of species. My blood ran cold. Species? Something akin to pity came into his face. That is a Tengu, a rival to my clan. Tengu, I repeated until the word sparked recognition. A bird like yokai? He nodded. Harbingers of war. No, I shook my head. No. Jack is a person like me. Jack, he squinted his eyes in confusion. That one is Ak, the sound of a crow. You know what? I held up my hands. I've had too much. I'm going downstairs to get some water, and by the time I do, you'd better be gone, I huffed as I descended the steps, wondering if the guy I'd brought home was ready to institute me. Hi, I smiled. Hey, he smiled back, as I took a seat beside him on the couch. You know what's funny? I leaned against him, trying to think of something to diffuse the tension. and set my mind at ease. If you say your name really fast, it sounds like a crow. His body became rigid. How so? I pulled back to look at him suspiciously. Ock? A strange smile grew on his face as he started to laugh. I laughed awkwardly along like someone who doesn't get the joke. He paused. So, you know. I stood up as he caught my wrist and held it fast. I quavered. Know what? There are Tengu in your woods. I swallowed against my dry throat and played dumb. Tengu? What's a Tengu? I was just going to grab a glass of... Shut your whore mouth. His words made me do the opposite. I gaped at him like a fish. The sensitive Tim Burton image was replaced by one of an angry Hot Topic cashier. I'd heard he'd acquired a bride, but I didn't think she'd be human. Nor did I think she'd be so stupid. Stupid? My eyes grew narrow. Listen, buddy, I'm in on your game. You'd better get out now while you still can. Why? He looked at me arrogantly. You think he'll take you back? You've kissed a member of the rival clan. You're damaged goods. I need him where it hurts. Now your goods are damaged. Get out! He coughed a laugh. You're going to wish you hadn't done that. I made a beeline for the backyard when I saw the crows circling in the red sky. 5 of them. A murder. As they descended, they each formed the shape of a masked man. I was surrounded. I kicked and punched with all of my might, fighting towards the Sakura, but I was no match for the trained warriors. Ock stepped forth from my back door. Take her to the leader. A smile split his face as the warriors wrapped their arms around my biceps. No! I cried. You can't! I can do anything I want, he grinned. Princess. You never listen. I growled in his direction. You can't take me because I'm spoken for. He's right here. The Tengus laughed. Where? Ock moved forward. I see no one. It seems your betrothed has abandoned you. I thought back to all the times I'd looked up at that tree over the past few months, and even further to the times I sat and admired the blossoms fall, or climbed on the branches and entrusted my secrets. A smile came to my face. Never. He will never abandon me. Our roots are shared. Ock scoffed. Where is he? I told you. I stomped the ground. Here. Suddenly, roots sprouted up from the ground and wrapped themselves around the Tengus, dragging them into the darkness of the forest. Ock made an effort to run, but was pinned. Standing as the limbs twisted around his torso, I dusted myself off as I approached. That was an awful dirty trick you played on me, Ock. But I will admit, it was my fault for not believing in my betrothed. My face was inches from his. Trust that I will not make the same mistake again. I know you're kind, he nodded. Slow to believe and quick to forget. And when you do, I'll be there. Is that so? I examined his form. Then I can't let you go. What? His eyes grew wide. Not without your wings clipped. No! Splinters shot up through his back as I closed my eyes against his screams. When I opened them once more, he was gone. I fell to my knees on the damp ground and heaved deep breaths. I could talk a big game, but it was hard to follow through. After a few moments, there was pale feet in the mud in front of me. I lifted my eyes to my silent savior, my husband-to-be, and he was pissed. I'm sorry. I bowed my head as my eyes watered. This all happened because I couldn't wrap my head around your existence. I should have known. I've failed you as a fiancé. His forefinger caught my chin and tilted my head upwards to meet his gaze. Do you doubt me now? No, I shook my head. Never again, I promise. Good. A smile returned to his cold face. Now will you be faithful? Hey! I stood up indignantly. Like I said before, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were real, all right? Besides, you were some sort of shorty-shotta who showed up on my porch with a stack of gold and some gangster raccoon. How was I supposed to know all that was true, huh? His laughter was like a brook as he leaned in to effortlessly press a kiss against my lips. And unlike ox beak-like lips, it was a soft, petal sensation I could never forget. My eyes opened blearily against his retreating form. Wait a minute, I called out. I'd better see more of you if you want this marriage to work. He kept walking as I stood my ground. I don't even know your name. He turned before reaching the forest, and I'd swear the sun came out with his smile. Haru. Part 3. In the days that followed, I did not see Haru, although I may have looked at the tree a little too intently. My mother sat beside me on the porch steps. Chio, staring at the buds won't make them open any sooner, you know. I broke out of my trance and turned to her. Oh, yeah, right, I sighed. Who is it this time? She put her chin in her hand. I did a double take at her tired eyes. Who says it has to be someone? I've just got a lot on my plate right now. Because of some boy? I laughed. He'd resent that. Oh, a man then. Her brows rose. Old? You have no idea, I snorted. A sly smile came to her face. Married? Not yet, I turned to her. You really think I'd go after some married guy? I don't know. She leaned back to stealthily grab something. Someone's been flipping through these bridal magazines. Hey! I snatched it out of her hand and hid it under my legs. Heat creeped up my neck. I was just curious about the dresses is all. Chio, her voice dropped in a typical mom fashion. Is there something you're not telling me? No, I drawled, pushing my lips out too far. Her eyes were daggers. Okay, well, maybe this guy sort of proposed. To you? Yes, Mom, I sighed, to me. Her jaw dropped. And what did you say? Well, he gave me a lot of money and... Chio, she gasped. He's not one of those sugar daddies, is he? Bridal money, Kassan. He's old-fashioned. Maybe that's why it's all moving so fast. Maybe that's why we haven't spent so much time together. I looked at the happy bride on the cover of the crumbled magazine, but I trust him. He seems to like me for what's that's worth. Besides, I smirked, it's not like I could back out now. Or ever. She mumbled under her breath. Okay, so when's the wedding? Or am I not invited? Crap, I hadn't thought of guests. Would there be guests? Did he have a family? March 20th, she nodded. Next year, then? No, I gulped. A breath. This one. What? She stood swiftly. Were you two planning to elope? Kind of, I squinted. She shook her head. And where would you live? I don't know. Truly, I didn't. I had expected it to be a marriage in contract only. Chills went up my spine and my stomach became queasy. What would be expected of me? Would it be a life of servitude? Would I ever see my family or friends again? Well, you'd better figure it out fast. She walked back towards the house. I don't like the sound of this, Chio. Not at all. Admittedly, neither did I. My heart dropped as I looked up at the branches. Kami-sama, I whispered. We need to talk. I don't know how to be a good wife. I don't even know that I can be a god? I'm only human. So I need you to show me. If you want to make this work, come for dinner. My voice cracked as I spoke to the chilled air. Please? As I returned inside for supper, my appetite had all but vanished. Oh, Mom observed. Looks like we're going to get some snowfall. I looked out the glass doors as small flakes drifted lazily downward. Just a dusting, right? Kasan shoveled some food in her mouth. Should be a couple of inches. What? My chair made a screeching noise as I ran to the window. But won't that harm the cherry blossoms? Chio, my mom dissented. It's just a cherry tree. No! I turned to her with my stomach in my throat. It's not. It's my cherry tree. She swallowed her food and stared at me briefly. It's been there 100 years. It should be able to weather the storm. Yeah. I slowly returned to my seat. I guess you're right. I lingered at the dinner table long after my mother had finished. I poked at the uneaten food, hoping with all my might that Haru would come walking through that back door, hoping he could show me that we could weather this storm together. It was nearly 9 o'clock by the time I gave up and put my dishes in the sink. Chio! I heard my mother frantically crying as she ran down the steps. Chio! She huffed and puffed as she stopped in front of me. There's a child in your bed. Child? I was lost in thought. Child! Haru. I struggled for an explanation that would explain how he looked exactly like the groom on my wedding day. That's his, son. Son? She looked as if I'd hit her with a sack of bricks. My lips became thin. I was really screwing this up. He was really screwing this up. Let me go check on him. I ran swiftly up the steps, ready to berate him for making things hard, when I noticed his small stature and flushed complexion. His eyes were closed and he was heaving for breath. Something wasn't right. Haru? I approached delicately. Haru! I placed the back of my hand on his head and felt it burning under my skin. I was about to retract it when he caught me at the wrist. Apologies, he mumbled. What? I spoke. Missed. He breathed through his nose. Dinner. No, I said calmly. It's all right. I don't think you would have eaten anyway. Haru, are you all right? He was silent for a moment as he swallowed against his scratchy throat. Punishment. Punishment? My heart raced. Who was getting punished? What do you mean? Marrying. His blurry auburn eyes found mine, then dropped at the shameful word. Human. You're getting punished? My brow furrowed. For me? For a proposal I made by mistake? Haru, I'm going to put a stop to this right now. Mistake? His voice was small as his sweaty palms regripped. No. Stay. Why? Won't they listen to reason? Need to. Keep you safe. My eyes traveled all over his form. All right, Haru. I took a seat beside him on the bed. I'll stay. Chio! My mother's voice was traveling up the steps. Seems the pipes have turned to ice. I had no idea it would be this cold. She stood warily in my doorway, staring at my hand in Haru's. He's sick. I looked in her eyes. He's sorry he couldn't make dinner. That's all right, young man. She looked back at me coldly. I didn't know he was coming anyway. It seemed both sides of our families disapproved. I heaved a sigh. I'm going to fetch some things before the snow picks up. Maybe I can get some medicine. No, I stood and Haru squeezed my hand. No, you've got milk and bread. We don't need anything. Don't go outside. She gave me a confused glance. Okay, I guess I'll... Crack! The shatter of glass was heard downstairs. Haru struggled to sit up. What was that? My mom looked over her shoulder. Haru's expression was steel. She's here. What? My mom turned to him. It must be really, really cold, Mom, I tittered. Windows are breaking. Maybe we should get somewhere where they are, not? Preferably somewhere without frozen water, just in case pipes burst. She blinked. Like my walk-in closet? Yeah, I nodded. Sure, we'll meet you there. If you say so. She looked at me dumbly before turning. Man, those weather forecasters don't get anything right these days. Soon after, the lights flickered off, and we were plunged into cold darkness. The inky blackness akin to how I imagined space would feel. Haru? I looked to him as his hold on my hand had gone limp. Haru? I shook him slightly, but he didn't rouse. Crap. Guess it was just me against the angry god. I mulled things over before slipping my hand under his shot of form. Forgive me, I spoke as I lifted him onto my hip and dashed out the doorway. In a moment I paused to look at the frost creeping up the stairs. My feet became frozen to the ground. The house was suddenly cast an eerie blue hue, like moonlight on fresh snow. Chio! My name sounded like the winds of winter howling up the steps. I shielded us against the gale as a beautiful pale woman appeared, her hair flowing locks of snow. I held Haru tighter. Yukiona. My breath formed clouds before me. Her smile was ice. The human recalls a term for us. I struggled to free my frostbitten feet. Who are you to Haru? Can't you see you're hurting him? Her laughter was like an avalanche. We are nothing compared to you. What are you talking about? We hear all. Your proposal was a mistake. A mistake? I looked down to Haru. Oh no. I had said that, hadn't I? I looked back to Yukiona. No, not like that. I meant it was a mistake because I hadn't planned it. I didn't even know Haru existed. If I had planned something way more extravagant, don't you think? You are worthless, she circled me. Short-lived, short-sighted girl. Humans are sacrifices, not wives. My body racked with shivers. Exactly. The howling wind slowed as she examined me dubiously. I tried telling him that. I'm only human. I looked at his sleeping face. My voice became quieter. I have no idea why he chose me. So you agree, then? She approached me. Let us cancel this arrangement. Hand him to us. No! I pulled him impossibly tighter. Haru is my fiancé. You may not understand what he sees in me, but he wants me. He chose me, as human as I am. You wouldn't take his bride from him. I examined her eyes. Would you? Her icicle nails closed into a fist. We shall see, human girl. We shall see. In a blink of an eye, the cold subsided, and the ice left my feet. Yuki Ono was gone. I folded to the floor as the weight of my fiancé grew. The weather must have been improving outside as well. Did you hear that, Haru? I grabbed his grown face, his eyes still closed. It wasn't a mistake. It was the best thing to ever happen in my dull life. And there's still so much I want to know about you, so much I want to share with you. So you'd better not die. Tears drip from my eyes. Do you hear me? To my amazement, the droplets soaked into his skin as his eyelids fluttered open. His auburn eyes observed me before he wrapped me in his arms. I'd never felt so safe and sheltered. His embrace reminded me of summers tucked into the branches of my favorite tree. No, he smiled. Not a mistake at all. Chio? My mother emerged from her bedroom. Seems the power's back on. Oh! She stopped, her hand to her mouth in surprise. Mother, I pulled back slightly, keeping his hand in mine. I would like you to meet my fiancé. So quoth this raven. I can't wait for this series to finish. It's absolutely wonderful. Mistress Lady has done an amazing job. And I would like to thank my Patreon supporters, Ermin Case, Darren and Jennifer Daw, and Callistinik. If you like this, please hit the little button to let me know. If you didn't, hit the little button to let me know. Leave a comment. I'm always glad to talk with you, my darlings. I'm open to suggestions and criticisms, critiques. If you have not subscribed, please do so and ring the little bell so you know when to come up and see me. And I will talk to you next time, my darlings. Farewell.